How can someone become an effective listener? Stay tuned to find out. This is something that I am still working on. I used to be really good at not listening. As soon as someone would start speaking, I would all of a sudden start formulating pictures in my head and start judging things they say, or just coming up with answers instead of just hearing what the person had to say. It's taken a while for me, but it's gotten a whole lot better to where I actually will look at someone and listen intently to what they're saying, and I have found out that a lot of times I just don't completely understand what they say. So then I start asking questions, which helps me engage even more in listening. This has been my experience. But it got better really when I started learning about the teachings and learning about not judging others. I'm learning a lot from this video and this topic. How about you? I'm going to ask my husband now, though, because he's on the other side of the camera, and you can't answer me at this time. Honey?
Well, you have me curious because with what you just said, because, for example, you said that when someone would be talking, that you would be formulating answers already, right? Mm-hmm. While they're talking. And I know when I got to know you, you were like that. Then you said the part about how they would say something and then you realized that you didn't really understand what they were saying. Then you would start asking questions. But I remember that there was a phase there where you used to pretend like you understood.
Yes.
You remember that?
Yes.
So I just wanted to add that because I feel that that's a very important thing to to cover as well. Because that's the part that you skipped, where you went from, okay, you didn't listen, to, okay, you started listening and asking questions, but then there was that phase in between where you just be like, oh, and later on when I be talking to you, then I realized you had no clue what they were saying.
That's right.
Right? Remember
yes,
that?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So, since you're there, let's use you as an example, right?
Okay.
So then why would you start out, or why would you start looking to formulate an answer when someone was talking to you?
I think that's because of the environment that I grew up in, where well, there were different factors. One, you kind of had to fight to be heard, and then number two, everyone argued a lot in the social groups I was a part of, and they were always quick to judge and label and categorize. So growing up with and seeing that and always being a part of it, it just was something I naturally did.
Will you please give me an example of when you say label and categorize?
Okay. I'm trying to think of a good one, because a lot of it was religious upbringing. If someone was talking about the Bible and all of a sudden they started to talk about something that was considered New Age, automatically, oh, they're not a real Christian. They are following the you-know-who, and they're going down the wrong path. We need to get them back on track. And they could have just been giving a simple comparison of something they learned.
Okay. So then, when someone will be talking then about, say, religion, instead of listening to what they're saying, you'd be formulating an answer?
Yes. Or even anytime someone spoke to me, I'd be formulating an answer because I always felt like I was being questioned.
Well, maybe you were being questioned. What's wrong with that?
Well, it always made me defensive, like I had to defend myself, like there was something wrong with me not knowing information, or I always had to have an answer.
Okay, so it's not that someone was asking you a question, it's you feeling that you had to have an answer.
Right, it was my perception of what was taking place and what I was accustomed to doing.
And what was that perception?
That's it.
This is an interview.
Yes, it is. Well, my perception at that time was that people were either coming to me for answers, or they were coming to accuse me of things, or trying to, find out what I knew and how much I knew, and if I could defend myself, or whatever it may have been.
Okay, well, if someone is just coming to you to ask questions, why would
anybody just come to me and ask me questions?
Because...
That was my perception.
Oh, okay.
Why are you questioning me?
Because maybe you have an answer.
Maybe someone wanted to hear my viewpoint and what I really thought. But see, I don't really ever think back in those days that I felt like I really thought for myself. Like I always, if you will, like I regurgitated things that my parents taught me, or that I learned from school, or from the social groups I was in.
Which you actually did with some things. So remember, I would ask you, do you even know what that word means or what that phrase means? And then you'd tell me...
Nope.
No, you would tell me no. You'd actually tell me...
I tried to explain it.
Exactly.
The way I understood it.
And then when you're done, you're like, that's actually not accurate.
Right. Then I'd understand, no, you really don't know.
Uh-huh.
And even to this day, there are phrases and words that people use, and I'm like, I really don't know what they are. And in the past, I would pretend like I knew and go along with it, and sometimes I'd be way off, and they'd be like, no. But now I just ask.
Well,
I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to ask anymore.
You're jumping ahead now, right?
Oh, I'm jumping ahead.
We're the part about the listening part.
Got it.
Where we're not doing a good job of listening. And it's not just you. We're just using you as an example.
Right.
And you have some good pointers or good points that you're bringing up. So if someone feels like they're being accused of something, then the moment someone asks them a question, then they feel like they're being accused.
I feel like I always had to defend myself.
And that happened between you and myself for years. When we were just friends. By the time we got married, that wasn't happening anymore.
Not as much.
For way too long.
Right.
But I remember I would ask you a question, and then you would raise your voice. You remember that?
Yes.
And then what would I ask you?
Why are you raising your voice?
Right.
I'm raising my voice? I didn't know I was raising my voice.
That's what you would say. But what do you learn about me?
You ask a lot of questions.
Right?
I mean, when I first met this guy, I really didn't like him.
Oh, now
because
this guy? I'm this guy now?
This guy over here that you can't see.
It's like my cousin Billy. I'm done with this guy.
I thought he hated me because all he ever did to me, again, my perspective, was attack me. Constantly asking me questions, especially why? Oh my gosh, can't you just be satisfied with what I told you? How did you come up with that? Can't you figure it out on your own?
See, you've always said that you thought I hated you, but I always ask you, why would you think that?
See, there you go. Why?
No, but finding out, I understand. It's because I kept asking you questions.
Yes, you ask too many questions. Don't you just know these things? Oh my gosh.
See, we'll get to that part in a moment. See, why it's like that. Okay, so then you would get defensive, and so of course now you're not really listening to what the person. See, there's so many times when I would say, that's not what I was saying. I would even tell you that, right?
Yep.
And you'd be like, well, then what were you saying?
And then you'd be like, well, forget it. We don't need to talk about it anymore. I'm like, no, you said that's not what you were saying. Get to the point. What are you saying?
Now, why did I say forget it?
Because I was probably already very defensive. And you're not going to get through to this thick skull here, you know?
I don't want to argue, right? You're already raising your voice. You
had this giant barrier up already.
That way your face is all red and everything, and you're like the top of your lungs screaming. I'm like, just, I'll wait till later. Like, no, you brought it up.
See, many times you wouldn't even say, I'll wait till later. That's it, we're just done. And then maybe a week later, okay, I asked you this before.
You're calmer then.
Like, okay, so what were you trying to say? And then he tells me, like, well, why didn't you just get to the point?
Because somebody was screaming.
Because I got defensive. Because he didn't get to the point. And then he's always telling me, get to the point. And I'm like, okay.
So But if you feel like you're being attacked,
Yes.
and that comes from, like you said, that's more of a, like just like you said, that's more of a perspective thing, right? It's your
Right.
perception of what the situation is. Because I don't recall ever attacking you. I mean, I ask, you see me do that even to this day. I'll just
He
stop
asks
somebody.
everybody questions.
Exactly. I'll stop someone on the street that I've never met and I'll ask them questions, you know that. And they don't think I'm attacking them. They're nice enough to smile and answer my question.
They're not like me.
So that's one.
Right.
Another one would be, what? Where maybe you think you don't know the answer?
Right. Well, I don't understand what they're saying.
Oh, okay.
So then I try to figure it out based on, I don't know what, maybe the context. And sometimes it's not even just the words that they're using, but their examples or comparisons. You know how like when you tell a story and then you give something to relate to that story so it
Right.
makes sense to people? I had no idea what people were talking about sometimes.
But then how,
And then I also, because I didn't do well in school, I felt like I wasn't really educated. So when people would talk to me and it was information I didn't know, I would tune out because I'd be like, I have no clue what they're talking about.
no,
That also
that's a
happens.
good one, where if you don't think you're smart enough, and you're, besides being beautiful, you're very intelligent. See, but it's interesting how people always look at things as, oh, because I did poorly in school, then I'm not smart, or I'm not intelligent. And you're one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. I mean, our kids see that here. You've seen that for yourself now after all these years. Finally. Right? Even though I've been telling you for years.
But
Because-
I think a lot of it came though when people would use words that I didn't know or talk about subjects that I wasn't familiar with. Then I just shrink down, put on that defensive shield, and
that was before you realized that a wise person asks questions.
that's right.
Got
I mean, why would I ask you any questions? It's like nobody asks anybody questions. Don't question me.
Oh, that's how you thought?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were asking me that now.
No, that was the past.
So why would you think that way though? That you're not supposed to ask questions? Is that because maybe, well, you answer.
No, in my household, you didn't question mom and dad. What they said, that was it. You could question authority, you know, if you're being pulled over by the cops or something. But you don't question your parents, you don't question your elders, you don't question the church. You just don't.
Okay. But now this is a friend that's talking to you. So it's not authority. So why would you not question a friend or just an acquaintance? Because they're not authority and they're not your parents. They're not the church.
I never thought I had to learn anything much where I needed to ask questions, I guess. I don't know. I mean, if I asked questions, it wasn't about anything truly important, I don't think. I'm trying to remember conversations I had with people.
Right.
I only had a couple of friends, so I didn't really, I don't know.
Is it possible that maybe you thought the person might think that you're not smart?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Because I've seen that with people, you know, with kids the kids that we work with. I asked them, why didn't you ask the question? Well, coach, I thought it was a dumb question, or I thought maybe the other guys would laugh at me. That's how they would respond normally. And you can tell when they're tuned out because, you know, like their eyes just gloss over and they're looking somewhere else, and we pay attention
Yes.
to things like that, right?
Yes, yes.
So,
Even when I went to a Bible study, the first one ever, I had no idea what they were even talking about. The Bible I had was different than theirs, and I'm trying to pay attention. Now I just lost the whole time. But I didn't ask questions. So I figured I'd just figure it out on my own.
and that's more of a self-confidence thing.
I think so.
Okay, so we could say that one of the reasons why people might not listen attentively is because of self-confidence,
Yes.
right? We could say that, or self-esteem. It could also be because of their perception.
Yes,
Do you agree
definitely.
with that?
I agree wholeheartedly with that.
And how do you even tell somebody that what they're perceiving is not accurate? You really can't, right?
Yes, it's challenging
Or you could
too.
tell them, but they're not going to believe it
Right.
because that's what they have created in their minds, and they believe that 100%.
And not until I really opened up to really seeing things differently and having it pointed out to me that I do see things differently than other people, I really was not open to, changing the way I thought and saw things.
So now what caused you to, or what happened for you to all of a sudden decide that, okay, if somebody's asking me a question, I don't have to get defensive, or it's not because they're accusing me of something. What happened for you to start realizing that that's not the case?
I got used to you.
Used to me? Why am I being brought into this picture?
Because it wasn't until I started working with you that started to change. Otherwise, at the jobs I had, at home with my parents, I never questioned, because you don't question anyone, you don't question anybody in authority or who is older than you. You just don't. I might ask how something works, or if I didn't know something that I needed to know in relation to society and law or something, I'd ask, but otherwise you just don't ask questions.
Okay, so
But when we started doing business together, and I needed to understand people, that's when things started to change, because I had to learn different cultures.
No, but if you
that I had to deal with.
Because you said that you were afraid to ask questions because maybe you'll appear dumb. So what happened for you to feel that it's okay for me to ask questions and I won't appear dumb? That's what I'd like.
I think it was a Stephen Covey training. Seek first to understand before seeking to be understood.
Right.
And in seeking to understand, you have to ask questions when you don't know. And when I finally understood that concept, because we went through 4 or 5 of those Stephen Covey trainings, and
weren't you one of the trainers? I know I was a trainer.
Right, but you had to go through the course.
Right.
Then you had to go through the courses as you're being trained. Then you had to go through it again as you're delivering it. So each time we went through it, it just sunk in even more. And I'm like, oh, I'm really getting it now, And that's when things really started to change. Was having that different perspective from someone else who did it in a really nice way of explaining. And then that coupled with, in the industry we were in, the financial services, of understanding cultures because of all the different people from around the world that we worked with. It was like, wow, I really, I do have to ask questions and really listen so I can understand where they're coming from in order to be able to effectively help them. Because not everybody's like me.
And so now, then what happened about the change in attitude? What caused the change in attitude? Was it also the training where you're being asked questions and you're not becoming defensive?
I think a lot of that had to do with because I was learning the teachings and I was decreeing a lot more, so I was more calm and I felt more balanced and open.
All right. So now, to end this, we talked about all the things that could go wrong. So how do you effectively listen then?
You clear your mind, which is what I do.
How do you clear your mind?
As someone is speaking, I'm just listening to the words. If there's a word I don't know, I just ask them right away, what does that mean? Just so I can understand what they're saying. I am very sure that I do my best to make sure not to judge anything they say or come up with conclusions or start thinking about answers or some kind of response to give them. I'm really just paying attention to what the words are coming out of their mouth, looking them straight in the eye. I think that's another key, is when you are communicating and listening, you look at the person in the eye. Sometimes I'm looking at their mouth so I make sure I understand their words, especially if they have an accent that I am not familiar with. So I think those are all
and to me,
keys.
Well, to me, a big one is if you happen to think something negative, or you think that maybe they just told you, you feel a negative sensation because of something they said, it's better to clear it up right there.
Yes.
Don't assume that somebody's insulting you or they just said something negative about you. It's easier to just say, you know what, this is how I feel when you said that. Is that what you were trying to accomplish, right?
Is that what you meant?
Exactly. And in many cases, that's not the case. Because again, it's based on the perception that we have and what we're used to. That when somebody would do that or say that to us, they're attacking us from our past.
Yep.
But someone else, they don't know your past. They're just talking, or they're just expressing themselves.
And it could be like in my husband's case, where sometimes he just uses a word that's incorrect, and I'll be like, "Did you mean to say that?" He said, "Oh no, I meant this instead." He'll give me a different word. Well, but not
Is that-
slapping his fingers, but
Oh, okay.
he'll say,
Oh, that's when I'm trying to talk. You mean like the American lingo stuff?
Yes, when my husband tries to use cliches and speak
There we go,
American.
cliches, right. Oh yes, I can say some really things.
He says some doozies. Anyway.
So that's when you say, hey, wait a minute, is this what you meant?
Uh-huh.
You don't want to walk away with that impression that this person was doing something, and then the person wasn't even doing that. That was not even the
Correct.
intention, right?
Right.
So the point is, ask questions. Ask a lot of questions.
Yep, especially if you feel angry or upset, bothered, anything by something someone says. Bring it out right away. Don't let it simmer and build up inside, because you could be completely wrong with the conclusion you may have just jumped to because you judged.
And when we say bring it up, calmly, right?
Yes.
Not with a bad attitude or not screaming or shouting, because you don't know if what you think or what you perceive is accurate. So when you ask that question, you're asking for clarification more than anything else, right? If you start shouting, that means you already judged, you already drew your conclusion and you believe it.
Right.
Okay?
Hopefully this video has helped you. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to have addressed with this, please be sure to let us know. Remember to subscribe and like this video. Join the Facebook group 190 Vision to connect with others on the same journey. Get help by visiting our website 190vision.com. Support the 190 Vision mission by clicking on the donate button, which is at the bottom of each page of our website.